All right, everybody, welcome back to Horn Takes. I'm your host, the guy that wears sunglasses in his basement at his mom's house. It's episode 45. We're doing an edition of From the Cheap Cities. We're going to talk about the Texas Orange and White game today and our takeaways. So before we get too far into it, just some general thoughts. All these spring games is just sort of a glorified scrimmage. I get excited about them because it's college football. I think they are exciting, and I think all college football fans should be excited about them. But they're not the end-all, be-all. We don't know what the team is going to do. And I'd be saying this if the orange and white spring game was a complete bust or if it was like the greatest thing I've ever seen. It's just really a glorified scrimmage. What is great about it is you get to see some guys that you don't normally get to see play. You get to see the new guys that have come in and come into campus either through the transfer portal or guys that have got on campus early in the spring from high school, from the recruiting class the year before. So I think they're awesome. I would have loved to have been there. It looked like there was a good crowd. I know it was a good time around the stadium that day. The weather looked nice. So I'm kind of bummed I couldn't make it, but let's make sure as a group, Texas fans and even college football fans, that we don't overreact too much to what we saw in the spring game. There's a lot of people talking about this spring game one way or the other, right? You've got I've seen some stuff online from some Georgia fans saying that Texas looks slow, they're going to get killed in the SEC. Texas looked weak, they're going to get killed in the SEC. And then you got guys that are just super excited about what they saw during the scrimmage that are Texas fans. And I don't care who you are. Like, most fans of a team are not going to go, oh, man, that spring game, that fucking sucked. We looked awful. There's always going to be some sort of, I don't know whether you call it delusion, but there's always going to be a little bit of you looking at something differently than other people look at it because you're a fan of that team. You know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Having said all that, I thought the screen and there were some Texas fans that had a lot of negative things to say about the spring game. I thought overall the spring game went pretty well, and we'll get into that as we move through these different position groups and what we thought there. Let's start out with the QBs because that's where most of the discussion is coming from regarding this game. Quinn Ewers, I thought Quinn Ewers looked good. I don't think he didn't do anything to wow anybody, and he didn't do anything really bad either. I think he just played within the sort of the confines of what the plays were called during this game. He did complete a really nice pass to Xavier Worthy down the field, dropped it in really nicely, kind of as he was moved off to his left. I thought he made good reads. I thought his throws were nice and crisp. There was one play where I think he tried to force the ball into somewhat of coverage, but it wasn't, like an egregious deal. So I thought Quinn looked good. I think you go down the list, you look at Malik Murphy. I thought Malik Murphy looked really good as well. I mean, you're talking about a guy that got to Texas last year in the fall. He was already hurt, so he didn't even get a chance to really participate in fall practice. I'm sure he got to be in all the meetings and all that stuff, and maybe some light drills, but I doubt it. He had a lower leg injury, so he probably physically was very, very limited, if not completely limited. But he got a chance to study the playbook, hear the coaches talk about the plays. If he was paying any kind of attention, and I'm sure he was, he got to hear the coaches interact with the guys that were playing. In some cases, that can be very beneficial. Learning from other people's mistakes, learning from situations that you see sort of from the outside where there's no pressure at all. There's nothing on the line there. You're just learning. He got a chance to do that. But and I've said this before. I said it last year during football season, and I kind of got beat up about it a little bit. I think maybe it was probably half and half. I said I got to see Malik Murphy in some warm-ups before, I believe it was before the TCU game. And, man, he could spin it. And I don't say I got the opportunity. I got the opportunity before all the games we went to last year. We went to 3 last year. We went to Alabama, Oklahoma, and then TCU. But I got a chance to really pay attention to him. And man, I thought, arm talent wise, I said it back then, he can do anything with the ball that Quinn Ewers can do with the ball. He's got all the throws. His arm is an absolute hose. He's got a stronger arm than Quinn Ewers. But I thought what was really impressive about Malik Murphy in this scrimmage was just the decision making and his ability to place the ball. I thought his deep balls looked really good, which is something that's been a problem at Texas for the last couple of years. 2 years ago, Hudson Card couldn't hit a deep pass. Last year, Quinn Ewers struggled a lot with the deep ball. It was good to see a quarterback come in and be able to get the ball down the field and get the ball down the field pretty accurately. I think the throw to DeAndre Moore that he dropped was a little short. It could have been a better pass, but it was close. It was a nice throw. Anyway, I thought Malik Murphy overall did very well in this scrimmage. I think he's the type of guy and the type of talent, I think, that is going to be a huge asset. That's the kind of guy you want to have as a second string quarterback. He is uber talented. He probably needs some time in the system, and man, I hope we get to see him play some this year. I think we will, and I expect that he's going to play well. Probably the biggest discussion after this scrimmage was Arch Manning. I had somebody on TikTok ask me specifically, can you talk about Arch Manning? He looked sloppy in the scrimmage. And this is before I got a chance to watch the scrimmage. We had baseball on Saturday, a doubleheader, and I didn't get a chance to watch the scrimmage live. I didn't get a chance to really watch it that night. I finished watching it Sunday morning. So I went into it expecting, and I tried to stay off of, some of the Longhorn websites I go to. I tried to stay off social media. I wanted to watch the game with really no preconceived notions about what went down. But I did see that one thing from somebody about Arch Manning, and they thought he had a sloppy game. I didn't think he had a sloppy game at all. I think Arch Manning just looked like a guy that has had 14 or 15 practices at the collegiate level. The deal with Arch Manning, and here's another thing about Arch Manning, I was really surprised with how big he is. I've heard all this stuff about how he's 6'4", 215, and when you saw him in his high school film, you knew he was bigger than everybody else, but you didn't really get a good, you didn't really get a good feel for what his size really was because he was playing against all these small kids. Anyway, he's a big dude, very physically put together. I thought he looked pretty mobile for his size. He's got good arm strength. But he did look like a guy that has played in 14, 15 practices. And I think for anybody to expect him to come in and just light the world on fire in this spring game was just placing these undue expectations on Arch Manning. Arch Manning, even though he may be the number one recruit, we could all argue about that. But he's definitely talented. And he's definitely a smart kid. He definitely, and he knows how to be a quarterback. That's the thing. That's sort of that intangible that I think Arch Manning has that a lot of other guys don't have. He's grown up around this. He's grown up around Hall of Fame quarterbacks, Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. He understands what it takes to go be a good quarterback and really not just be a good quarterback, but be a great quarterback. So I don't have any worries about Arch Manning at all. There were a lot of fans from other schools putting him down. There was people saying he was a 2-star recruit with a 5-star name and all this other stuff. I think that's completely unfair. All those schools, all those guys that were saying that shit would have been happy as hell if Arch Manning signed on the dotted line in December like he did with Texas. It's really sour grapes. It's pretty pathetic, actually. And honestly, if you just look at the performance, whether he had a last name or not, and I'll say this, I'll go so far as to say that Arch Manning has all this pressure on him because his last name is Manning. He doesn't have an advantage because his last name is Manning. If anything, people are going to scrutinize everything he does because his last name is Manning. So I think he handled the pressure well, and he didn't have a great performance. You could tell that the the speed of the game was a lot different for him than it was in high school. And that should be expected. How many top QBs come in and just show out immediately at their new school? It's not many. I think people have sort of looked at these guys that have come in lately and been able to do well. Trevor Lawrence, he's not the norm. We shouldn't be basing every quarterback's performance their freshman year off of Trevor Lawrence. I think the other thing you got to think about when you think about Arch Manning and his performance in this scrimmage was who he was playing with and who he was playing against. He was pretty much running for his life the whole scrimmage. I mean, he didn't have a lot of time to sit back in the pocket and do a whole lot of scanning down the field. So I think a lot of the criticism for Arch is completely unwarranted. I think it's sour grapes. I don't think he did great. I couldn't say I don't think he did great. He definitely needs a redshirt year, and that's been the plan the whole time. And that's why I made comments in the past about all these people that think Arch Manning is going to come in and push Quinn Ewers for the starting position are just, and I called them crackheads before, but they're still crackheads and they're fucking retarded is what they are. They're just not, they just don't understand the game of football. You don't just come in, talented or not, at the quarterback position. You don't just come in and take over the starting job like that. That's just not how it works. It almost never happens. When it does happen, they tend to struggle, and there's very, very tiny percentage of cases like Trevor Lawrence where they come in and they have some success. So I thought the QBs played really well in this game. I thought even that Wright kid that got some fourth-string reps, I thought he did pretty well. The quarterback room at Texas should not be a concern for anybody, is what I'm saying. They look pretty good. Quinn, again, he didn't do anything amazing in this scrimmage. He just did Quinn stuff. I don't even think Texas needs Quinn Ewers to be amazing. I think a above average Quinn Ewers last year has Texas in a much different position than the Quinn Ewers we saw down the stretch last year, where essentially they took the ball out of his hands late in games so they could win the game. They took the ball completely out of his hands in Kansas. And then late in the Baylor game, they took the ball completely out of his hands so they could go win the games. And that's because he struggled. We saw him struggle against Oklahoma State in a game where they forced him to throw the ball multiple hundreds of thousands of times for no reason. I'll still never understand that one. But I think Sark learned something there. He learned I have a running game. I should rely on my running game more. And I hope we see that more this year. And that takes us to the running backs. Jonathan Brooks, Keelan Robinson were out for precautionary reasons. I think they're a little banged up. Jonathan Brooks had a hernia surgery right after the Alamo Bowl this year. And then I'm not exactly sure what's going on with Keelan Robinson, but he's a little banged up. So they held him out. So your main three guys were Jaden Blue, Savion Red, Cedric Baxter. Jaden Blue probably had the most electrifying play of the scrimmage on a nice run. I think it was around a 30, 35-yard run, but he made a lot of people miss, showed some power, showed some burst out of his cuts, showed really good vision. And these are all things. Jaden Blue came out of high school really highly rated, really good running back prospect. And the problem is Jaden Blue came to Texas when you had Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson as the two starting running backs. And then the kid, Jonathan Brooks from Hallettsville, very highly rated kid as well. So the running back room is becoming a super big logjam at the University of Texas. I'm not trying to predict anything here, but I don't know how all these kids stay at Texas over the long haul, unless Sark makes a concerted effort to split carries and find ways to get those guys the ball. Savion Red, again, he was a wide receiver last year. He's moved into the running back room, and he looked really good too. He's a really he's not a tall kid, but he's a big kid. I think he's 5'10", 200, and I think they have him listed at 5'10", 205, 210 pounds. But he looked really good. He's obviously got speed. He played that slot receiver position last year. So he's got speed, he's got vision, he's got strength. The one area where Savion Red absolutely has to improve if he's going to make any impact is pass pro. He does not look good in pass pro whatsoever. I think part of that is just he's been a receiver all his life. Well, actually in high school he played everything. He played quarterback, receiver, probably played running back depending on what was going on. I'm sure he did a lot of wildcat stuff. I don't think he's ever been asked to step up in the hole and meet a linebacker that's bigger than him and stop him in his tracks. And that was pretty evident in that scrimmage. But he's got time in the fall to continue to get stronger, continue to work on his technique, continue to understand where he needs to be, because that's complicated as well. But Savion Red had a couple of nice runs in the scrimmage. And then Cedric Baxter, the number one running back recruit in the country, he got a few carries. He got a lot of carries. He looked okay. He looked like he's learning the speed of the game as well, adjusting to the fact that he's not going to run over every single person that touches him anymore. He's playing college football now, and he's playing at a school that plays, wants to be playing at a high level. In the past has played at a high level, and I think has the nucleus of players they need to play at a high level going forward. So Cedric Baxter, again, nothing amazing by Cedric Baxter, but they all looked okay. They all looked like they knew what to do. They knew where to go. Probably again with Savion Red, there's some things they need to work on in pass pro, but I thought the running backs looked good. And again, we were talking about things we need to worry about and things you don't need to worry about. Texas fans, you absolutely do not need to worry about the running back room. It is stacked with good talent. And then there's Jonathan Brooks and Keelan Robinson that didn't even play in this game. So right there's 5 guys that can tote the rock and can do all the – and the other thing is they can all catch. That's outstanding to have. I can't remember his name, but there's a walk-on that got some carries late in the game in this scrimmage. He did really well too. Some explosive plays. I should remember his name. I can't remember his name. I've actually never heard of him before. So when he was running, I was like, who is that guy? Because he looked really good. But all that tells me that, they've got talent at that position. The offensive line is improved, and they're able to make some room for these guys to run. And that's obviously important when you head into the season this year and you head into the SEC. The wide receivers, I think this is the group I'm most excited about out of all the groups, and I'm excited about the running backs and the quarterbacks. And I'll just start with A.D. Mitchell. That guy, now he was wearing a no-contact jersey, and I don't know how much that factored into his ability to get open. But he got open sometimes and looked really good. And that catch he made for the touchdown was really, really nice. He had a great little one-handed catch where he had to jump up in the air, catch the ball with one hand on a little skinny post. That guy, it's interesting to me. He was a 4-star recruit, but you look at his size and his speed and just his ball handling ability, he's different than anybody else on the roster. He's got there's like something, and I know it's one scrimmage. I don't want to put too much on this, but you look at what he's done while he was at Georgia, and you look at what he just did in this orange and white game, the ability to be like a huge difference maker from the wide receiver position is definitely there for A.D. Mitchell. I think that was a huge pickup for Sark. When it happened, when all the noise was going on that he was leaving Georgia and then Texas kind of became the front runner and he committed, I was obviously excited because I knew what he did in those national championship games. But I didn't realize just how athletic this guy was and like I didn't realize he had the ball skills that he has. I don't know how that guy was a 4-star, to be perfectly. He's the tallest wide receiver on the Texas wide receiver group. In the Texas wide receiver, I think they said he's 6'5", 6'4", 6'5". So he's a long kid, has good speed and great hands. Xavier Worthy, I thought he looked like Xavier Worthy. I mean, except he caught all the passes. I think he might have dropped one. But other than that, he made a lot of really good catches. He runs crisp routes. Obviously has speed. He's what he is. I think again, if the rumors are true that he had a broken hand most of the second half of last season, then I think we all have to kind of give him a pass on some of the drop balls. But it'll be interesting to see how he bounces back. Xavier Worthy had an amazing freshman season. And then even last season was good. He led the Big 12 in reception touchdowns. But he had some drops, and he had some key drops, and I think there was, true or not, there was a perception that he had sort of an attitude problem going on, and I think that rubbed a lot of Texas fans the wrong way. It'll be interesting to see how Xavier Worthy bounces back in 2023. And now they have A.D. Mitchell, and we still don't know about Isaiah Nair. His rehab is coming along really well by all accounts. He's another real tall, real long, ball skills type of guy like A.D. Mitchell. Those are the two guys. If Nair is healthy going into this fall, those are the two guys that you're going to see running down the field to catch long balls. It's not going to be Xavier Worthy, and that's not really Xavier Worthy's game. Xavier Worthy's game is catch the ball, make a move, and then just outrun everybody. And I think there was also some added pressure on him to be that guy that could get down the field when Nair went down in the fall with the torn ACL. So we'll see how all of these things affect Xavier Worthy and his ability to bounce back from a really good sophomore campaign, but what was one that I'm sure disappointed him and disappointed a lot of Texas fans. Jordan Whittington. He's Jordan Whittington. That guy, I'm really glad Jordan Whittington came back. I think that's going to be a huge shot in the arm for this receiver group. That's another weapon for Quinn Ewers, a proven weapon. Last year was his first solid season where he didn't get hurt at Texas. I don't know what you attribute that to necessarily. I got to think you attribute it to the strength and conditioning program, at least in some respect. So it's good to see Jordan Whittington be healthy, be able to participate, and he had a really good game. He's the type of guy that can catch the ball and run with the ball in his hands after the catch. A couple of newcomers that made a couple splashes, DeAndre Moore and Jonte Cook. Jonte Cook had a long touchdown reception out of the hands of Malik Murphy. It was against the walk-on. I don't put a whole lot of stock in his ability to run past a walk-on, but he had a couple of other plays where he caught the ball. He clearly has speed. He has good hands. DeAndre Moore had a drop on a long ball. I think the play right before the Malik Murphy touchdown pass to Jonte Cook that with a better pass and a catch would have been a touchdown as well. But DeAndre Moore had a couple of other plays where he looked the part. So the receiver room at Texas is really deep. It's really talented. And I expect that group to make a lot of plays this year for Texas. The tight ends, really quiet afternoon for those guys. JT Sanders and Gunnar Helm were the only ones I noticed on the field. I'm sure some of the other guys got to play. But they both had targets, and I don't think either one of them had a catch. So I'm not real sure what to think about that. I still feel like JT Sanders is an amazingly talented guy. And I think the tight end position is one that Sarkisian wants to focus on and get some big plays out of. But he just hasn't had all the other pieces, I don't think. Offensive line, you go back to the spring game last year, they couldn't even really do a spring game because they didn't have enough bodies. Now they got too deep of some really talented guys, and now a lot of those guys have some experience. I think what Kyle Flood has been able to do with that group And the guys that Kyle Flood and Steve Sarkisian have been able to recruit over the last 2 years, it's been an amazing excuse me. It's been an amazing turnaround, what we've seen from that group. So I'm excited about them. Those guys are big. That is a we've seen Texas offensive lines before, even on some of the better teams, like in the Mac Brown era. That, I mean, they're all big kids, right? Like they're not rolling any munchkins out there, but I don't. There's just something about they just didn't look as big as some other offensive lines, and this group is big, and they are big and they're strong, surprisingly athletic for their size. I think the offensive line group. I think you're going to see a big difference in Texas's offense this year, and I think a lot of that credit needs to go to the offensive line, needs to go to Kyle Flood for developing those guys. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do, because last year was a marked improvement over the year before with the offensive line, and they did that with a bunch of pups. So we'll see how it goes offensively this year for Texas, especially that offensive line. On the defensive side of the ball, there's a lot of quality depth at the defensive line position. A lot of guys that can play, which is good. But you need to be able to rotate guys in and out, keep those guys fresh. I thought Ant Hill had a pretty good game. He was around the ball a lot. He had one pass rush from the inside linebacker position, inside linebacker position. It looked really good. He's got a lot of speed, and he has a nose for the ball. Alfred Collins, I've talked about him before. He's not in the starting rotation. I really want to see him, and I say starting rotation. He's not on that starting two on the defensive line, defensive tackles, inside guys. I really want to see him. I want the light to come on for that guy, because I was watching a play, and I saw this guy in the interior make a great inside move, get up the field, and I was like, whoa, who the hell is that? And then I saw him standing there between plays, and that dude, he's just a beast. He is a massive dude, Alfred Collins is probably sitting at, I don't know, I don't want to predict his body fat percent. It is low. He is a solidly built young man, and his arms got to be the longest arms on the team. He is just he's got that prototypical, like, all pro, you have no chance of blocking me type body. And so I think the only thing that's holding that guy back is the mental side of it. And I wish it would click for him. Like I said, you see these glimpses from him where you go, man, that guy is ridiculous. But you don't see it near enough. And I think consistency has been his problem since he's been at Texas. I really hope the light comes on for that dude, because if it does, that's just another body that Texas can put in there and depend on. And that's the type of guy that can change games. Ethan Burke, another name, another guy I noticed a lot in this scrimmage. He was the late flip from Michigan last year at Austin Westlake, Tall, skinny looking kid, had a lacrosse scholarship. Apparently was an amazing lacrosse player. But he had a lacrosse scholarship to go play at some school on the East Coast. Michigan offered him a football scholarship. He's originally committed to Michigan. Flips late and decides to come to Texas. He got a lot of play last year. And you could tell he didn't have a fucking clue what he was doing. But you could also tell that physically, he was the type of dude that physically he was all there. He just needs to figure out how to play football. Well, I think he's figured out how to play football, and he's actually even gotten more physically imposing. He's put on quite a bit of weight. He's changed his body a lot since he's gotten to Texas, and he was all over the place during this scrimmage. He's going to be a problem. I think his length makes him really tough on offensive tackles. He can get his hands on them way before they can get their hands on him. He's speedy. He's rangy for his size. And now he's got some strength behind him. He's been in a big time college strength and conditioning program for almost a year. And you can see it. The defensive backs, there wasn't a whole lot going on. You got Catalan that was out of the scrimmage. He was a guy that they held out. He had some sort of work done on his shoulder operationally after committing to Texas. And a couple of the other guys were wearing no contact jerseys. And honestly, in the passing game, there wasn't a whole lot of threatening with the ball downfield. It was a vanilla game plan offensively. I think it was a pretty vanilla game plan defensively. So the defensive backs didn't really flash that much. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think overall, you look at this game, there wasn't a whole lot of flash either way. And I think, to me, I see that as a good thing because that means to me that both sides are better. Both sides are good at what they do. So if I'm watching a spring game and the offense comes in and has 700 yards of offense and scores 42 points, I'm going to walk away from that going, I'm really concerned about our defense. Or if the offense literally can't do anything and the defense just absolutely dominates the whole thing, I'm going to walk away from that scrimmage saying to myself, man, our offense has got some issues. We're going to struggle to score points. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it was a relatively low scoring affair for college football today anyway. And both sides made plays. You could see offensively that there's potential there to make some big plays. You could see defensively there were some guys that made plays. So I think sort of the boring nature of this spring game, if you're a Texas fan, I see that as a positive thing. Transfer portal news. Texas is losing a few guys. They just announced recently wide receiver Jaden Alexis, who I don't believe has a single catch at the University of Texas. Wide receiver Brennan Thompson, who is an absolute speed merchant, but only had one catch in 2022. He's a guy that skipped out on spring football to go run track this spring. He's got track kind of speed. He's that fast. I don't know if he's one of those guys that can take that speed, put it on a football field, and have it translate to positive outcomes or not. He was only a freshman last year. He's portaling out. Looks like he's probably going to end up at Oklahoma. Oklahoma fans seem super excited about that. To me, you don't ever want to lose guys, right? There's obviously a reason Steve Sarkisian targeted him. There's obviously a reason, they wanted him to come to school here. You never want to lose those types of guys, but his production at Texas has been basically non-existent. And who knows? It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Some of these guys are going to develop faster than others. He may end up turning into an absolute offensive dynamo wherever he ends up. But it ain't going to be at Texas. And then you had a couple linebackers transfer out, Derek Brown, Travell Johnson. These are both guys that came in last year, and they're undersized guys for the position that they were going to play. They could be guys that develop late too. They're both very athletic, especially Derek Brown. But Derek Brown got to Texas weighing like 210 pounds or 215 pounds. Played a lot of, you watch his film out of high school, he played a lot of edge position type stuff where he came off the corner, came off the edge on blitzes and things like that. Doesn't have the body type today to play, linebacker in college. And that, talented or not, I think those guys just didn't pan out physically in their first year at Texas. So they're going to move on. Who knows where those guys end up? Texas did get one portal commitment from Trill Carter out of Minnesota, big defensive tackle. This guy's a 2-time honorable mention All Big Ten guy. He's a 3-time All Big Ten academic guy. A lot of people don't think that's important. I think that's important in football. I think guys that can excel in the classroom are going to do better on the football field because they understand what you're trying to tell them. They understand what you're trying to do. Because they do well in the classroom, they can handle other things maybe on the football field that other guys can't. If any, I don't know much about this dude at all. I've never seen him play. I've seen a few clips, highlight type clips from Minnesota. He can make plays, or he did make plays at Minnesota. We'll see. He's definitely going to add to some depth. I mean, we talk about it all the time, especially in the trenches. You got to have depth. In any position in college football, you want to have solid depth. So when one guy goes down or has to take a rest, you got another guy that can go in, and there's not this huge drop-off. So he'll be the type of guy that can come in if he doesn't get a starting position and certainly add depth. And Texas rotates their defensive tackles a lot. So if Trill Carter can come in, learn the defense, I think that guy's going to be an impact player for Texas. I don't know how impactful. We'll see. I'm hoping a lot impactful. An interesting rule change for college football. As of July 1st, recruits can now take unlimited official visits. They've always been able to do unlimited unofficial visits, in other words, on their own dime, but now they can go to as many schools on the school's dime as they want to. And I was thinking about it. I think that's going to change recruiting a lot. We've seen what you typically see during a recruiting cycle is you see these guys become targeted as juniors. In other words, they're headed into their senior year. Most of these guys get targeted during that period. And I'm not saying the coaches haven't, they know who these guys are. They've probably sent them letters, things like that. But the recruiting really picks up for those guys around junior year. And you have a lot of those guys start committing. A lot of these guys want to just kind of be done with recruiting. They don't want to mess with it anymore. So by the end of summer, before their senior season, a lot of these guys are committing. And then there's another group that kind of come in and they end up committing right before the early signing period. And then there's very few of these guys anymore that are waiting till the February signing period. But I think because they can now go on a ton of official visits, they can go on as many as they want. They're going to go to some of those during the summer like they had before. But now they can spread them out if they want to. And some of these guys may still say, man, I don't want to go visit 10 schools. Officially, here's my list. Maybe I'll go to 6. Maybe they still stick with 5. Who knows? But I think what the potential is I think that February signing period might get a little more exciting because right now, 99.99% of the people are sending in their letter of intent in December. And then there's all this time between that and February where these guys could be going on official visits. Unless they change some of the dead period stuff too. Maybe not. I'll have to look into that. I'm all for it. I think it's cool that now I don't have to go spend all my money to see multiple schools anymore. Before, you got your 5 official visits, and if you wanted to see anything else, you kind of had to go do it on your own dime. And now there's not that pressure anymore as of July 31st. Let me know what you guys think about the new recruiting rule. I think it's good. I think it's one of those rules that is a positive step for college football. I've talked a lot about NIL and how we've completely jumped the shark with NIL. I've talked a lot about the transfer portal and how I think it's fair that these athletes can now move on if their coaches move on. Because I think that's the reason why we really started the transfer portal. Is because players started saying, well, man, my head coach can just up and leave right in the middle of my college career, and I can't. I'm stuck here, but the coach who makes millions and millions of dollars can just go do what he wants. How's that fair? So the transfer portal was a response to that, but now it's gotten completely ridiculous. The transfer portal has turned into, I didn't start as a freshman. I'm getting the hell out of here. Y'all can kiss my ass. I'm going somewhere else. And that's what, I don't know what the percentages are, but that's a big percentage of these guys that are going into the portal are guys that they didn't get to play where they're at. And so now they think they're going somewhere else. And if you look at the statistics, and we did a show about this some point during the season last year, it's like 50% of guys that enter in the portal do not find another place to play football. So the risk is you go into the portal, you might not find anything. And now you're talking about not only do you not find a place to go play football, now you got to go, if you want to proceed with your academic career, you got to go find a way to do that, more than likely on your own dime. So I think the portal is great for those superstar grad transfer types, and it's great for the blue bloods of college football. It is not great at all for your everyday Division I football player that shows up on campus, can't crack the 2 or 3 deep, and decides, man, I got to go someplace else because I'm never going to play here. And I think it'll be interesting to see, like, in 10 years, how those statistics pan out, what that percentage looks like. But right now it's freaking ugly because you're having to compete with high school recruits. A lot of people probably recruited Derek Brown and Travell Johnson out of high school, Jaden Alexis and Brennan Thompson out of high school. When they committed to Texas, they probably stopped recruiting them and paying attention to them. And there's no film on those guys going and doing anything. So if you're a college coach, are you going to take a guy that you haven't seen play at the collegiate level at all? Or are you going to take the guy that you just watched play his senior year and is a top 300 recruit in the country? I think that's the danger. Join us later this week on the Bullpen. We're going to talk about the Baylor series. What a ugly series that was. And then we'll talk about the midweek they've got with Abilene Christian. That game's tonight, 6:30, down at Disch-Falk Field on the Longhorn Network. Subscribe to the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find the podcast at horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com. If you'd rather look at me while I talk about sports, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's at Horntakes. You can find me on TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook at Horntakes. And you can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. You guys have a good one. Hook 'em.